Captain Marcus Chen had seen enough in his 23 years of galactic service to know when something was off. The girl sitting in the corner of the detention cell aboard his ship was perhaps 16, maybe 17, with tangled brown hair and clothes that had seen better months. She'd been picked up from a derelict transport vessel drifting in the Kepler Nebula, the sole survivor of what appeared to be a pirate raid. "What's your name?" Marcus had asked when they first brought her aboard the Resilience. "Sarah," she'd whispered, not meeting his eyes. "Sarah Mitchell." Standard human name, standard human appearance. But something about her made Marcus's seasoned instincts prickle with unease. For 3 days, she'd sat in that cell, not because she was a prisoner, but because medical quarantine protocols demanded it. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had run every scan imaginable, each one coming back with the same result: perfectly normal human female, slightly malnourished, showing signs of prolonged stress. "She's clean," Tanaka had reported. "Physically, anyway, psychologically. She's been through hell. Won't talk about what happened to her family or the other passengers." Sarah ate little, spoke less, and spent most of her time staring out the small porthole at the stars. Sometimes Marcus caught her whispering to herself in what sounded like multiple languages. Some he recognized, others that seemed to twist his tongue just hearing them. Everything changed when the Zephyrian fleet appeared. 12 massive dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent threat displays. The Resilience, a modest exploration vessel, was utterly outmatched. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Liu announced, his voice tight with fear. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the lead Zephyrian vessel. The bridge was a cathedral of living bone and sinew, walls that breathed and floors that shifted like ocean waves. At its center stood Queen Veltar, the most feared ruler in the Outer Rim. The Zephyrians were an ancient species, their empire spanning 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Queen Veltar herself was a towering figure, nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws and a crown of bone that grew directly from her skull. Her species had conquered worlds before humanity had learned to make fire. "Humans," she spoke, her voice a harmony of musical tones that somehow conveyed absolute menace. "You carry something that belongs to us. Surrender it, and your deaths will be swift." Marcus stepped forward, his jaw set. "This is Captain Chen of the Earth vessel Resilience. We're on a peaceful exploration mission. We have nothing that belongs to your empire." Queen Veltar's 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern across her face, began to glow with inner fire. "Do not test our patience, human. We can smell her from here. The Songweaver's daughter walks among you." Behind Marcus, he heard Dr. Tanaka gasp. Several crew members exchanged confused glances, but in the depths of the ship, in a detention cell that suddenly felt far too small, Sarah Mitchell stood up, for the first time in 3 days. "The what now?" Marcus demanded. But Queen Veltar was no longer looking at him. Her gaze had shifted to something beyond the view screen, beyond the ship itself. 30 of your seconds," the Queen hissed. "Then we reduce your vessel to its component atoms," the transmission cut. Marcus was about to order battle stations when the ship's internal comm crackled to life. Sarah's voice, no longer the whispered tone of a traumatized teenager, filled the bridge. "Captain Chen, would you please escort me to the main cargo bay? I believe it's time I introduced myself properly." When Marcus arrived at the cargo bay, he found Sarah standing in the center of the room, but she was no longer the broken girl they'd rescued. She stood tall, her presence somehow filling the vast space, and when she turned to look at him, her eyes held depths that seemed to stretch back millennia. "My name," she said, "is not Sarah Mitchell. I am Lyion, last daughter of the Song Weavers, of Andromeda." The words meant nothing to Marcus, but they apparently meant everything to the Zephyrians. Through the cargo bay's massive viewing port, he could see the alien fleet repositioning itself, not for attack, but as if forming some kind of honor guard. "The Song Weavers," Lyion continued, "were the oldest race in the known universe. We guided the development of consciousness itself, nurturing younger species, teaching them the songs that bind reality together. My people were destroyed in a war that ended before your son was born, but not before they hid me away, disguised as human, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Marcus asked. "For the universe to need us again." Lyion raised her hand, and suddenly, the air itself began to sing. It wasn't sound in any conventional sense. It was deeper than that, a vibration that seemed to originate from the very fabric of space-time. The ship hummed in harmony, its hull plates resonating with frequencies that human instruments couldn't measure. Through the viewport, the Zephyrian fleet was responding. Their bioship's luminescent patterns had shifted from threat displays to something that looked almost like reverence. "Request permission to beam aboard," came Queen Veltar's voice over the comm, but the tone was completely different now. Gone was the menace, replaced by something Marcus had never heard from, a Zephyrian humility. "Permission granted," Lyion replied, before Marcus could speak. Moments later, the most feared ruler in 3 spiral arms materialized in the cargo bay. Queen Veltar took one look at Lyion and immediately fell to her knees, her 6 arms spread, wide in a gesture of supplication. And then, impossibly, she began to weep. The sight was beyond surreal. This creature, who commanded fleets that could glass entire planets, was crying like a child before a human teenager who wasn't human at all. "Forgive us," Queen Veltar whispered, her musical voice broken with emotion. "We thought, we hoped, but we never dared believe that any song weaver survived. My people have spent 10,000 years in darkness, unable to hear the songs that once guided us to wisdom. We became conquerors because we forgot how to be gardeners." Lyion knelt beside, the alien queen placing a gentle hand on her bone crown. "There is nothing to forgive. The songs were never gone. You simply forgot how to listen. But that changes now." She began to sing then, and Marcus felt tears streaming down his own face without knowing why. It was a song of loss and redemption, of species rising and falling, and rising again, of the long, slow dance of consciousness as it spread throughout the cosmos. As her voice filled the cargo bay, Marcus finally understood what he was witnessing. Humanity hadn't just rescued a refugee. They had saved the universe's oldest teacher, its most patient gardener, and now in the heart of a human vessel, surrounded by the children of a species that had conquered through fear rather than wisdom, the last song weaver was preparing to teach the galaxy how to sing again. The war that had raged across the outer rim for the past 50 years would end not with humanity's superior tactics or technology, but with a song that reminded an ancient species why they had first reached for the stars. And Captain Marcus Chen, who had started his day worried about quarantine protocols and supply inventories, realized he was about to become a footnote in the galaxy's greatest story of redemption.